Welcome back to the Literally First Class podcast. This is the last for a little while of our series, the Q&A from the Somatic Success Society in our Facebook group. If you're not inside that community, it's a free Facebook group for women in business that want to learn somatic strategies. Back in 2022, I trademarked a process called the Somatic Success Method, and since then you'll start to see some people try and copy it. But if you want the original, the real deal, y'all got to come into our world, come be part of our programs. There is no knockoff. There is no replication of that original idea and that method. And so what we bring together is both the business and leadership aspect with the therapy and the trauma healing. What this was born from is I often would find a program and it felt very masculine and strategy based, or only strategy based, let's say. Obviously, we need that with business. Like, hello, you can't just meditate on a mountain and hope that things work out. You have to take action and do things and have a plan, right? Especially if you're leading a team. Or the program was like very flowy and about embodiment and releasing, etc. And then there's very little action. Sometimes people get lost in the circular nature of healing and, waiting for things to feel aligned and, wondering why it doesn't. And kind of just getting lost in the sauce, right? Getting lost in their feelings, treating feelings as facts. And I believe that one is incomplete without the other, that you need to have both. We definitely are a little bit more healing heavy, if you will, in the nervous system work. But I love to call this applied somatics because otherwise, what the fuck is it all for? Like, we want to heal things, we want to release things, but then what do I do with this information? How do I apply it? So, we do what's called somatic strategies. And inside the Facebook group, inside this free community, you can find all sorts of free trainings that we've done over the last few years. We'll probably do a few more this year, but you can go in, you can check those out. We have leadership archetypes, how your business triggers you, the Shift Workshop, which is a two-part series, all sorts of stuff that brings together the somatic and the success, hence the somatic success method, and how we approach business, leadership, and life to build something that you're really in love with, right? I don't want you to build walls around you. I want you to build a box and a platform to stand on. So today's question comes from Rebecca Thomas. She brings another amazing question to this conversation, which is, how do I know the difference between an intuitive no and my fear? This one's an interesting question because I can't really say, right? And there might be people that, have some sort of dialed in, answer and method that they have, canned for this. But to be honest with you, it's not my job to tell you what your intuition is saying. That's where it's your job to trust whatever guidance that is coming to you through you and to follow that if it feels right and aligned. Now, this one is very tough and it's super nuanced because I think this is where the coaching industry gets a bad rap for certain things. And I also think that where this also gets lost in translation or creates misunderstandings is a misuse of power dynamics, where a coach says, well, your intuition is saying this. Like, who am I to tell you what your intuition is saying? My job is to help guide you back to what you say is your experience of intuition, nurture that and amplify it so that you know it as you continue to expand and evolve. It's not my job to discern between whether it's intuition or fear. That's an inside job, but I can definitely guide you back toward your awareness. And the way that I do that is through healing work with the nervous system, trauma training modalities, right? Our somatic strategies, and our actual renegotiation of trauma in the body, getting to know your nervous system, but also asking open-ended questions that lead you back to your own awareness, that empower you, that ignite and illuminate for you your intuition or whatever your intuition sounds like. What I'll say scientifically is often our intuition feels like a gut feeling, specifically because this is our gut brain, right? It's 7 times more powerful than our thinking brain. And this feeling can feel like a sixth sense. I had a gut feeling, right? I knew it all along. The hairs on my neck stood up. Those are some somatic things that we might be saying unknowingly that are indicative of intuition. Other times, what I often hear clients say, and I'm not saying that this is your intuition, but I'm saying that oftentimes when clients arrive at a place that feels intuitively guided for them, the theme and the feelings that I hear over and over again are that it feels like it's in their heart, it feels warm, it feels open, peaceful, and expansive. So, those are often the somatic cues and the somatic expression of how that shows up for them with intuition. Fear, I think we all know fear. It might feel like sheer panic. It might feel like your heart rate is picking up. You might start to sweat. You might get blotchy. That's how you know that some sort of protective response somatically is coming online, AKA protecting you from a perceived threat, fear. So that's just a little bit of somatic language around what I've seen with fear and intuition. What I'll say is this, and a mentor shared this with me a while ago, and I just thought, man, that is so powerful. His name is Will Reason, good friend of mine. And he said that when you hear a no and it feels like your intuition, whether or not it's your intuition, it's important for you to listen to that. So a no is still a no, whether it's from fear or intuition. And honestly, that I think is such a crucial part of trauma work because trauma occurs where a boundary has been breached, where a no hasn't been honored. It hasn't been heard, it hasn't been seen, and it hasn't been honored. So I might look for this with a potential client or a client when I say, "Hey, are you open to us exploring that?" And they say, "Yes." But they're shaking their head no. Hold on a second. We've got to pay attention to that because their body is telling me two different things. Their body is actually saying no. Their voice is saying yes. So I say, I'm just going to invite you to pause. Let's just take a breath. And I'm going to ask you the question again. And I want you to it's okay either way. Is it a full no or is it a full yes? And we want to make sure that there's congruence. And then something else he mentioned was that, when you receive a no, it's important that you follow that. You may not know that it was fear guiding you or trauma misleading you until way down the line. But maybe that was a lesson and a learning that God needed to take you down so that you could learn something from it. So, who am I to rob you of your transformation when that was an important, fearful no under the guise of intuition for you to follow? Right? And I know that that's frustrating because I am definitely an upper limit specialist and I help women navigate, through their fear, through their potential self-sabotage, um, through these moments that are really important, right? There's a lot. There's high stakes. There's a lot on the line. But I promise you, as we whittle it down, you will know in less time what is intuitive and what is fear, and, you just you don't have to rush to make that decision. You just have to listen for the answer that's the most congruent in your body and in your mind together. So let's talk about a no. When a no is not honored and a boundary has been breached, trauma occurs. Because what happens there is it starts to wear away at the trust that we have with ourselves, our ability to trust our judgment to make a decision, our ability to move with a decision, our ability to move fast with a decision. So this can absolutely affect our ability to make higher level decisions and move fast when we have information around a yes or a no. You'll get to know your fear the more you do nervous system work. You'll also get to know your intuition. So you'll get to discern what is intuition and fear based on the gut, based on the sensations, maybe in the heart space, the racing heart, right? All of those different somatic pieces that come into play the more that we get to know your unique nervous system. So I'll give you an example. I once had a client, we had been working a long time together at this point. I want to say we were at least a year deep in coaching, which it gets better the longer we work together because I know your nervous system more. And then I can start to ask certain questions and say, hey, like I've noticed this pattern. What do you think about that? Do you think that that sounds accurate to you? And you run that through your body and then you can weigh in, right? I'm always having you practice running it through your body so that we can co-create through intuition and navigate fear. Anyway, I have this client. We had been working together maybe 12 months. I mean, it was at least a year. And she went back to her family's house and it was like a holiday break. She was really looking forward to being there. And on our next coaching call, she goes, I think I just need to leave. I think I need to go back home. And I think I'm done with this visit, even though I didn't book a return flight and I planned on staying for 2 weeks. They're driving me crazy. And she goes, I want my sheets. I want my coffee maker. I want to like get back to my friends and all this stuff. Now, this was admittedly before I knew everything I know now, because I'm always learning and I'm always, sharpening the axe with my skill set. So I hadn't been yet in the trauma training, but I was still doing breakthrough and transformation coaching. And I knew her nervous system. I knew her patterns. I knew, how connection was for her enough that I could lovingly say and reflect to her a possibility through an open-ended question, which was like, do you think it's really about your sheets and your coffee, or do you think that you're just missing being comfortable being at home? It was something to that effect. And she was like, oh, right. And it was that simple invitation into a potential reframe. And I'm using very passive, suggestive, invitational language on purpose, because this is not me inserting myself to say, this is how it is. Here's what I see. Here's the problem. Right. I don't do that often. And so she was like, oh man, like, I totally see how that is playing out. And immediately it hit her because she could feel it in her body. That is true. I feel that. I know that. Absolutely. And so as we work together, oftentimes this happens in our Apex Academy, because, you guys get to coach with me in the group every single week, pretty much every single week in there, but absolutely in our one-on-one containers, just because it's so intimate. Like it's you and me, 1 hour a week, every week, ongoing. And we do that for about a year. And then after that, we can probably go to biweekly. But that's where we really make some fast progress, because I'm getting to know you. We're creating trust and safety together. And we're able to go faster and further in less time because of that. So I had that relationship with the client to say that, but with the person asking the question here, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know the difference between your intuitive no and your fear. I don't know what your intuition sounds like to you, because we haven't done a session together or sessions. I don't know what your fear typically shows up as behaviorally or somatically. So it's really challenging for me, and really, like, it would be unfair, honestly, for me to weigh in and say, like, this is this and this is this, but I can tell you how it typically shows up with clients or what I typically see. Let's talk about behaviors, right? Let's talk about behaviorally what shows up with fear when we see that play out, because that's often the level of consciousness. Like, that's where we're aware that something is playing out, is either after the fact, like, oh man, that was fear leading me, or my trauma misleading me. And there's a quote I love, and it says, is it your intuition guiding you or your trauma misleading you? And you really don't know that until you start doing the nervous system work, because you don't have the somatic information. Like, you don't know what happens inside your body to catch that, right? Because the thing that's important to notice here before we get to the behavioral part, before we get to the tip of the iceberg that's like above the water that you're conscious and aware of, is that there's a lot happening beneath the surface. And the whole job of the nervous system is to protect you. And so it does that automatically. The ANS, the autonomic nervous system. So yay, your nervous system is doing its job when it is protecting you and when there's fear, especially if you haven't been here yet, wherever here is. And that's frustrating, right? Because you're like, well, if I would have caught it, right? But you're not supposed to catch it. Like, that's the point. The point is, if there's a fire outside my podcast studio door right now, I don't need to like say, I think I should get up and run away. My body just is going to go automatically into a self-protective response and save me and run the fuck out of the building, right? Flight response. That's just automatic. Thank God, because can you imagine we had to think about breathing and blinking and running out of a burning building? Wait, it's so much energy. So that's the other part, right? It's supposed to go undetected, and it's supposed to be automatic, because that requires the least amount of energy, right? Also uninteresting. But that's where we end up, again, utilizing our just instinctual survival mechanisms. That's the point. But what happens is we're running a business, and we're making more money than we've ever made before, and we're serving higher level clients than we've ever served before, and we're, writing books that put a target on our back, it feels like, because now we're even more visible. We're recording in a studio. That can feel very unsafe, even if there's no fire outside the door, even if there's nobody actually judging you. There's going to always be people judging you, but you know what I mean? Like, if there's no one specifically yelling at you in your physical realm in this very moment about the book you're writing, it's very frustrating. And so that's where I come in helping you discern for yourself what your intuition and fear sound like, feel like, and look like. You're likely aware of the behavior, right? Bringing it back full circle. You're likely aware of the behavior from the fear base, right? It might look like avoidance, right? Not doing the thing you know to do. It might look like um, doing things like procrastinating, doing anything other than what you should be doing to help move your business forward, or start writing your book, or take that next step in visibility, or put together that proposal for clients, right? And so what I'll tell you is I see this show up in a few different ways. I see this show up as people having trouble letting go of control with their team because they fear that if they're not involved in everything, they're going to, you know, lose money. They're going to take their foot off the gas. Like you might lose a little at first because you're training people, but in the long run, you're going to make more by multiplying your team and delegating things out. I see this with clients that are maybe having a tough month and they're like, oh, it's tight. I've got all this overhead, I have all these investments, all this stuff that's going out, and I need to get my profits up, this month, or we have to have a cash injection. And I take a look at things and I'm like, okay, well, what's your lowest hanging fruit? And then, oh, wait a minute. They're like, I just realized that I haven't invoiced some of my clients that owe me thousands of dollars in, the last year. I haven't invoiced them in 12 months. And you're like, okay, hold on, right? So there's some self sabotage at play. There's some procrastination at play. Like, why are we avoiding the things we know to do that help make our life easier, that help create safety and stability? So we want to look at that. We also want to look at what's our relationship to fear and chaos. If we have a relationship with fear and chaos, insofar that we know that lifestyle very well, like maybe we were raised in a very chaotic environment, what do you think we're going to unconsciously seek to recreate? More of what you know. Even if it's consciously not what you want, you're going to unconsciously create that. So the minute things get safe and stable, you're going to start to sabotage. I see this at the higher levels, multi-million dollar businesses. Things are working really well. And they're like, I'm going to go start 5 new companies. And I'm like, hold on. I'm not saying don't do that, but let's just pause and let's just say, you get to run this through your body for a couple weeks and just sit with that for a minute and see if anything changes. Let's just see if this is intuition leading you, or if your trauma is trying to bring you back into some sort of chaotic psychosomatic loop again, right? So it's not don't do it. The advisory is let's just sit with it and move a little slower, maybe with that decision. Or maybe they have a wild yes and they're super excited, but then all this fear comes up. Then we've got to clear some of that stuff so that they don't keep hearing no and experience doubt and confuse the doubt, or the fear of being there for a no, right? It's not a no, it was a yes. Based on what you just shared with me, based on what I just heard, what I saw, what I felt was it sounded like a yes. Like, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, no, it's a yes. There's just a lot of fear coming up. Okay, cool. Well, then it's a yes. Let's work with the fear that's trying to, override that and then move through it. Right. So you can see I'm giving you lots of different scenarios as far as how things can unfold and what happens at different levels and how I see that happen with different, female founders in their business and in their life. And, that's natural. That's natural. Like, yay, you're normal and your nervous system is doing its job when it's trying to protect you. And sometimes we have to follow the no, even if it's led by fear, because there's that lesson that we need to learn so that now we know the difference the next time. And I would encourage you, if you haven't applied for the Apex Academy, or you haven't booked in one of our power sessions, we offer one-on-one single sessions now with me. If you haven't done a session with me, get on the calendar and get some of that new somatic information so that you can take a different approach the next time, so that you don't waste all this time and you don't, put off things that you know that you're meant to do at whatever level you're at. And we can move through that, and then you're going to learn some somatic strategies as a result that have you make different decisions and help you make more empowered decisions so that you can discern between your intuition and your fear, and knowing the difference to the best of your ability based on your current level of awareness. And I say that because we're always peeling back the onion. Higher levels create higher stakes, and the fear doesn't go away. You just learn how to know it a little bit more. You learn how to trust yourself even when it's present, and you learn to know your no, your yes, your intuition, fear disguised as intuition, all of the above. So I love this question, and it's a really complicated answer, I think, because it just depends on your nervous system. It depends on the kind of trauma that you have, the business trauma that you might have experienced. It depends on where you're at and where you're trying to go, what that gap might look like between those two identities. There's just some things at play. And if you haven't done any of the somatic work, I think you're missing a huge piece that can really help support you in new, interesting, and faster ways, to be honest. So we'll put those links below in the show notes. And we'll have limited spots for the somatic sessions one-on-one because I'm one person. But if you know that you want that, go ahead. You can click that link below, book in with me. And then also we'll have our Apex Academy applications in there too. So, all right. Well, I'll see you on the next episode. In the meantime, keep it first class.